Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Joanna Ho. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. 4 major banks raise prime rates, signaling higher mortgage payments for home buyers. 3 doctors are arrested in an alleged COVID vaccine exemption scam. And former Chinese Justice Minister Fu Zhenghua is given a suspended death sentence for corruption. Home buyers face bigger monthly payments after 4 major commercial banks raised their prime rates for the first time in 4 years. This comes after the Hong Kong Monetary Authority followed the U.S. Federal Reserve and bumped up its base rate. Macy Mock reports.
HSBC took the lead among Hong Kong banks, raising its prime rate by 12.5 basis points to 5.125% from tomorrow. Its Hong Kong dollar savings rate goes up by 12.4 basis points to 0.125%. HSBC subsidiary Hang Seng Bank increases its prime rate by 12.5 basis points to 5.125% from Tuesday. Other banks followed suit with the same level of increase, bringing Standard Chartered's prime rate to 5.375%, and that of the Bank of China Hong Kong to 5.125%. The banks acted after the Hong Kong Monetary Authority raised its base rate by 75 basis points to 3.5%, the highest in 14 years. The city's de facto central bank followed the U.S. Federal Reserve, which increased its benchmark rate just hours earlier to try and reduce inflation. Higher interest rates mean that home buyers will have to pay more every month for their mortgages.
The public should be prepared for banks to increase the commercial interest rates and carefully assess and manage the relevant risks when making property purchase, taking out mortgages, or making other borrowing decisions.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan expressed concern about the economy.
External demand will suffer because of the high interest rate environment. Consequently, our export will suffer. In fact, the second quarter export of Hong Kong has dropped by more than 8%. So we have to be very careful. Economic-wise, one of the key drivers of our economic growth, that is exports, will be affected.
But Chan doesn't think that the property market will be affected greatly, citing supply and demand and the employment situation. Maisy Mock, HKIBC.
Lawmaker Michael Tian says it won't be long before the government announces the so-called 0+7 policy for incoming passengers. That means no hotel quarantine, but 7 days of medical surveillance.
I have reason to believe that it will be announced next week to be effective the week after. I support the government to do it step by step rather than huge quantum jump. And if anything goes wrong with the numbers, they do a rollback. Okay? That's what John Lee said openly, and I totally support that. A rollback is much more detrimental than a sort of step-by-step progressive move.
Meanwhile, Health Chief Lo Chung-mau said the government will also consider scrapping medical surveillance for arrivals once the public healthcare system returns to normal. You can watch the rest of our interview with Michael Tian on HKIBC at 8:30 p.m. on Saturday. Health officials believe that the city has already passed the peak of the COVID rebound following the 5th wave. This comes as daily infections showed a declining trend in the past 2 weeks. Of the 5,990 infections registered today, 163 were imported. There were also 17 deaths. Albert Au from the Center for Health Protection expects cases to keep declining in the short term. Positive results from sewage tests as well as hospital admissions have also decreased. He added that the number of confirmed cases in care homes fell recently. Police have arrested 3 doctors on suspicion of issuing certificates to exempt people from being vaccinated against COVID. One suspect is alleged to have charged $3,000 for each voucher. Macy Mock reports.
A 59-year-old man arrested at a clinic in Taiwan is among 3 doctors arrested. He is accused of issuing over 6,000 vaccination exemption certificates in 5 months, charging $3,000 for each. Police also arrested a 62-year-old doctor in a Yunlong clinic and a 51-year-old doctor who was escorted to a Tinshui clinic for investigation. They allegedly issued more than 1,000 exemption vouchers without any consultation or checks on medical records. So far, police have cracked down on 5 clinics. They also arrested people suspected of buying the certificates. Those arrested include 8 who allegedly purchased them from a Yao Mate clinic 2 days ago.
而串謀詐騙呢係一個嚴重嘅刑事罪行。
New Territories North Acting Senior Superintendent Joanna Ho warned that those who issue exemption certificates without consultations or those who provide false information to avoid COVID jabs could be jailed for up to 14 years for conspiracy to defraud. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The driver of a cement mixing truck has died after the vehicle plunged from a flyover and was rammed by a school bus. The accident happened when the driver lost control on the Changsha Highway at around noon. There were no students in the school bus, but the driver and 3 staff members were injured. The 67-year-old truck driver was rushed to hospital, but died despite resuscitation attempts. Former Chinese Justice Minister Fu Zhenghua has been given a suspended death sentence for taking bribes and aiding in illegal activities. State broadcaster CCTV showed Fu inside a courtroom in Changchun as judges passed sentence. The former senior Communist Party member was accused of abusing his power to help his brother hide his crimes. In return, he received millions of yuan in cash and property. Fu's death sentence will be commuted to life imprisonment after 2 years, but he won't be paroled. He joins a list of party heavyweights prosecuted under President Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign. U.S. President Joe Biden has criticized China's human rights record, but in his address to the United Nations, he tried to ease tensions between the 2 countries.
We do not seek conflict. We do not seek a Cold War. We do not ask any nation to choose between the United States or any other partner. And we will lead with our diplomacy to strive for peaceful resolution of conflicts. We seek to uphold peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. We remain committed to our one China policy, which has helped prevent conflict for 4 decades. And we continue to oppose unilateral changes in the status quo by either side.
Protests have erupted in Russia after President Vladimir Putin announced the partial mobilization of reservists. Some Russians are leaving the country to avoid fighting in Ukraine. Winna Wong reports.
No to war, they shouted as authorities arrested and hauled protesters onto police cars. The demonstration in the Russian capital, Moscow, occurred hours after President Vladimir Putin said he was escalating his war with Ukraine. The most valuable thing that they can take from us is the lives of our children. I won't give them my child's life, said this woman. There were similar scenes in St. Petersburg. Officers in riot gear took protesters away. And in Yekaterinburg, at least 40 people were detained. In total, over 1,000 protesters were reportedly arrested across Russia. Putin emerged after his speech to rally people in Moscow.
Быть патриотом – суть, природа и характер.
Being a patriot is the essence of the nature and character of the Russian people, he said. Apart from threatening to use all weapons at his disposal if pushed by the West, Putin's mobilization order will see 300,000 reservists called up as Russia's war in Ukraine reaches a crucial stage.
A lot of sort of college-educated Russians, Muscovites, in urban cities, pass through the so-called military department, within their university and got a title after doing some training, and I think probably assumed that they would never have to use that again.
Many facing conscription have booked a one-way ticket out of the country. Russians were seen pouring into Armenia and Serbia to avoid getting drafted. Winna Wong, HKIBC.
Locally again, the head of Hong Kong's biggest journalist union will be able to go to England as his court case has been adjourned to April. Ronson Chan appeared in West Kowloon Magistracy today and pleaded not guilty to obstructing a police officer outside McPherson Stadium in Mongkok earlier this month. He was granted bail of $20,000 and allowed to attend a 6-month fellowship program in Oxford University. But the chairman of the Journalists Association has to give his address and telephone number in Britain to Hong Kong police. Customs officers have arrested a director of the bakery chain Crostini, which closed down suddenly last week, angering those who bought vouchers. A 55-year-old man suspected of violating the Trade Descriptions Ordinance was granted bail pending further investigation. Customs received 104 complaints involving 5,300 prepaid coupons and gift vouchers worth around $270,000. People bought coupons which expire in 2025 last month, but couldn't redeem after Crostini closed abruptly. The U.S. Federal Reserve has signaled that more interest rate hikes are on the way, underlining its determination to slash inflation.
The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation.
With U.S. interest rates at its highest in 14 years, there are fears that economic growth could slow down. Higher borrowing costs may force businesses to shrink, and a recession could result. But the central bank believes that the situation would be worse if inflation is not tamed. The local stock market has plunged to its lowest in nearly 11 years following interest rate hikes in the United States and Hong Kong. The Hang Seng Index lost 1.6%, dragged down by tech stocks. Alibaba gave up 2.6% to hit a 6-month low. Tencent had its worst day in 4 years and dropping 1%. Electric car makers lost ground, with Xpeng slumping 11.6% and NIO plunging 7.5%. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index was down 296 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down $3, Alibaba down $2.20. AIA down $1.70, Ping An down 75 cents. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euros at 7.75, pounds at 8.89, and Australian dollar at 5.22. Over to the UK market, FTSE 100 is down 12 points. On to the weather now. It will be sunny with some showers tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 27 and 32 degrees. Expect more of the same in the following days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Joanna Ho. Thanks for watching. Good night.